Katelyn, welcome to Tailored Talent. Really excited to talk to you today in our financial leaders practice, given it is the flagship practice, the original practice of Bespoke Partners.
Excited to be here, Eric.
Katelyn, tell me about what the financial officer's practice entails.
Yeah, of course. As head of our finance office practice, I lead the finance function with two other partners here at Bespoke. At any given time, we're operating on a couple dozen different finance-related searches across the firm. We cover every aspect of finance, including CFO, controller, FP&A, corp dev. We've also recently seen an uptick in volume in compliance, tax, and treasury searches as well. And I think that's very much related to the current environment. We've completed a number of board searches, operating partner searches, and COO searches, provided that the person comes up from a finance bend as well. And then, broadly speaking, as a firm, we've done over 400 finance-related searches, which we're super proud of. A majority of those coming from growth equity and private equity, although we've been successful in the public arena as well. But I'd say sweet spot is more private equity as an asset class, software as an end market, and working with notable firms like Thoma Bravo, Clearlake Capital, TA, Associates, Apax, and a number of others as well.
No, fantastic. So overseeing effectively 30 or so searches at a given time, you really have a catbird seat on what's going on in the market. With that, talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing in terms of demand and the roles that people are seeking today.
It's a great question. Despite a down deal market, we've seen continued tight market for finance leaders as a consequence of market headwinds that have been experienced across the sector. CFOs and other senior leaders with strong track records with FP&A and from an FP&A standpoint continue to be highly desired. That said, one trend that we've been seeing lately is an uptick in need for folks and candidates that have strong accounting and technical backgrounds. I mentioned an increase in tax and treasury and compliance type roles, but we've also seen an increase in a desire for CFOs that come up more of an accounting technical track, as opposed to historically, there was a preference for FP&A spike. I would attribute that to just private equity firms' needs for candidates who understand and can drive cost takeouts, and then just operate with leaner operations, manage debt more effectively. Essentially looking for candidates and leaders and executives in the market who have a proven track record of managing overall cash flow, given some of the pressures that currently exist.
Fantastic. So, it's fair to say the age-old requirement was FP&A, but given the heady times today, folks are actually favoring an accounting background around cost-cutting, cash management, and the like.
Optimizing, exactly.
Given that, what are you seeing on the supply side of the market? So, what are you seeing in terms of the talent available?
Yeah, and it's interesting. Given despite the fact that it's a down market from a deal standpoint, it's still a hyperactive and tight market from a candidate standpoint, and therefore still a largely candidate-driven market. Quality candidates have optionality and are being hyper-selective. That said, they're likely in multiple processes at any given point. And that really drives some pressure on a search process. I think it increases the need for awareness of process timeline, hyper communication throughout the process from the search committee to ensure that everyone's informed. And then just as important and often overlooked is the relationship between the recruiter and the candidate, and ensuring that there's an established relationship of trust and really credibility there, so that you can get from the candidate exactly where they are in other processes, what we need to continue to drive the process forward, and what can we do to continue to position our opportunity as the lead opportunity for the candidate, or pivot the process so that we can stay in pole position. So it's just communication, trust, and efficient processes are critical in this market. That said, a couple trends that we've been seeing lately: multi-tenured CFOs are waiting this one out. And what do I mean by that? Yeah, I think there's an option to wait out the downturn. Lack of desire to do big transformation play again. And so looking at board roles, looking at operating partner roles, even looking at CEO roles, but just sort of sitting this one out. We've also seen an increased ability to shake out candidates who historically were timing off. And a lot of companies out there right now, their equity's underwater. The company was bought on an inflated multiple, so valuations are high, and that's increased the timeline for an exit. If you've got an effective recruiter who can really understand current market environment. I think there's a lot of candidates out there that are open to entertaining opportunities who historically were not, just given where they are current hold. And then being creative in terms of how to think about scorecard will just convert to the most diverse and interesting slate, in my opinion. And what I mean by that is, in the software world, I think looking at tech-enabled services or adjacent industries as a really viable source of very qualified candidates. Looking at step-up candidates, you can think about that in a couple different ways. There's obviously your true first-time CFO placement candidate, but there's also candidates who maybe have seen the journey from a scale standpoint as a number two. As a number one, they've been in smaller scale environments. Can we get comfortable with them stepping up into a larger environment? And then obviously just don't rule out the accounting backgrounds. And we've clearly seen a trend towards more accounting centric candidate placements who have been very impactful and effective in today's market.
No, absolutely. And I think everything you point out here really favors the need to partner with an expert in financial officers, which I think really suits how we've structured our firm, where we have 3 partners that are focused on this with long track records of placing these executives. Because the subtlety that I think is important here is it's a two-sided market. And so we do work with the best of the best private equity firms. But since our founding and Christy starting this business, we've been very astute to focus on the relationship with the candidates as well. Because as one of our clients puts it, we're after the top 10% in the market at any given time, which means the market is going to be tight. Talk to me a little bit about how that impacts compensation.
Yeah, I mean, Eric, I think it's a great point. And it's a critical point. Is relationships on the candidate side is really the make or break in getting top candidates to the table. And understanding motivators, drivers, and obviously compensation is one of those. From a compensation standpoint, given the competitive nature of the market, executives are still in a good position to push boundaries on total compensation. And we're seeing that in still pushing big compensation packages. That said, there's a cool down since 2021 where we were seeing very inflated compensation packages, upwards of 20% inflation on comp. I think that what you can attribute that to, again, is some of the market trends. So there are a lot of executives out there who were sold on big equity packages, big compensation packages, and now equity's underwater. Bonuses didn't get paid out. It's a business that was burning cash. They're not profitable. Maybe you're not getting your 2023 bonus. I think it's a wake up call to candidates to really anchor to quality of asset and opportunity as opposed to how far can I push comp. So I think overarching theme, compensate still candidate driven and compensation still high. That said, I think there are levers to pull to get candidates in seat that aren't just compensation related and really anchor to quality of the asset.
No, I think that's so smart. Again, it's one of the things that we benefit from having played in this space for so long in private equity is really helping position these companies in their best light as opportunities. And I think a lot of that has to do with the quality of the PE firms that we work with. Well, look, we've talked about the demand, we've talked about the supply, we've talked about the compensation or other attributes it takes to get a candidate to accept an offer. What are you seeing in terms of acceptance as you think about step-ups, geographic placement?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's certainly some trends across all of those factors. In terms of step-ups, I'm a huge proponent of looking at step-up candidates. I think in today's market, it's short-sighted not to consider step-ups. I hit on a few sort of ways to slice and dice the term step-up. There's obviously your true step-up, first-time CFO or director moving into a VP role for the first time. There's also the candidate that just hasn't seen that scale, but maybe has been proven and had checks every other box on the scorecard. At this point, I think we're still trending over 50% of our placements are step-up candidates. And we've been wildly successful. I think you need to do your diligence and mitigate the risk through the interview process, through back channel referencing, through thorough screening, but certainly still see a ton of success in looking at high caliber step-up candidates.
Well, and you mentioned wild success for the step-up candidates. I think it's really important to note that actually our data supports that step-up candidates are just as successful as sitting candidates we've seen in terms of outcomes. And a lot of that does have to do with the rigorous screening process that we have, as well as knowing the industry so well. Talk to me a little bit about geo. portfolio companies insisting that the CFO be in the location so they can be in office every day?
Great question, Eric. You know, it's interesting on the geo front. Prior to COVID, geo from a finance standpoint was critical and typically top 1, 2, 3 on the scorecard in terms of we want this person local. Obviously, in COVID, the world became your oyster, and you could look, north, south, east, west, doesn't matter. We want, name your other scorecard requirements. We've seen the pendulum start to swing back from a geo standpoint, in particular in the finance realm, and I think that's attributed to a few things. And when you think about CFOs relative to like go-to-market or CROs, they tend to be a little more introverted in nature, and their role tends to be more operationally driven. So with that, being in geo or close by from a commuting standpoint, because we all know not every commute is created equal. And I think to the extent that, it's a direct flight, it's the same time zone, it's an easy commute, allows a candidate to really be more impactful at driving various operational changes within the organization, which is critical for their mandate. So long-winded way of saying, we're seeing the pendulum swing back on mandates from a geo standpoint with strong preference to be local, with certainly still some level of flexibility. I don't think we'll ever go back to pre-COVID era, but from a CFO and finance standpoint, there definitely is some degree of preference and pressure to have this person local or spending time locally to drive impact.
Thank you for sharing an overview on the financial officers market. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is hang out with Bespokians per se. And so want to share a fun fact about you. What do you want folks to know about Katelyn that you might otherwise not know?
Fun fact about me. I think one thing that people find interesting is that I grew up on a dairy farm in Northern California. I'd be 4th generation if I had chose a different career path. But, cows get milked on Christmas. So not saying that Bespoke doesn't work on Christmas, but yeah, so grew up and then the dairy farm's still in operation. There's 6,000 head of cattle shipping over 20,000 gallons of milk a day. And, if you catch me on a good day, I can recite the 4-H pledge for you. That's a fun fact about me.
Fantastic. Well, and I certainly enjoy the sunset pictures of you on a horse on your family ranch. And so thank you for sharing. Thank you for joining us today. And I look forward to hosting you next quarter to give an update on financial officers trends.
Thank you for having me, Eric. It's great to be here. Really appreciate the time.